The early morning sun cast long, sharp shadows across the naval base as Lieutenant Maya Torres stepped off the transport van. Her boots hit the pavement with a quiet precision, a steady rhythm that seemed almost deliberate. She carried herself like any other officer arriving for a routine assignment, but there was a subtle weight to her presence that made people notice. Not loudly, not obnoxiously, but in a way that made them feel the air shift around her. She had requested temporary assignment to the Navy SEAL Training Command, a place where some of the nation's deadliest operators honed their skills. It was unusual for someone in her position, someone ostensibly an intelligence officer with a paper-heavy background, to find themselves in the middle of a room full of warriors who had earned their reputation in brutal, unforgiving environments. But this wasn't a request for prestige. It was a mission, one she intended to execute flawlessly. As Maya moved toward the command building, she noticed the SEALs in the training yard. Their bodies were taut, every movement fluid and practiced. They ran drills, threw themselves over obstacles, and barked commands to one another. Some of them paused briefly to look at her, eyebrows raised. There was an unspoken skepticism in those glances, a silent calculation of who she was and what she could do. She didn't flinch. She didn't acknowledge them. Her eyes scanned, taking in details most wouldn't even notice. The worn grips on a training rifle, the scuff marks on the cargo crates, the subtle hierarchy of the squad as it formed naturally during drills. Every observation added a mental layer to her assessment of the environment. By the time she entered the briefing room, she had already formed an impression of the team. Lieutenant Torres looked around the room, calm, composed, and precise. Her uniform was immaculate, her hair pulled back into a tight bun. She carried no unnecessary equipment, no gadgets meant to impress. Every inch of her conveyed a quiet confidence. And yet, the SEALs didn't know that quiet confidence was born of experience they couldn't even imagine. Petty Officer Blake was the first to react. Tall, muscular, with a grin that was always ready for mischief, he leaned against the wall near the door and tilted his head at her. "Well, well," he said loudly, drawing the attention of the entire room. "Look what we've got here, a lieutenant. What are you gonna do, sit at a desk and make us fill out reports?" His tone was playful, mocking, and the corners of his mouth tugged upward in a smirk. A few others chuckled, clearly enjoying the entertainment. It was classic SEAL humor, testing, prodding, trying to shake new arrivals out of their composure. Maya didn't respond immediately. She merely met his gaze with an expression so neutral it unsettled him. There was no defensiveness, no irritation, only observation. Her lips curved into a faint, imperceptible smile, almost like a hint that she already knew the weight of the joke. Captain Rhodes, sitting at the head of the room, raised an eyebrow. He had seen many officers come and go, and he could tell instantly when someone had a hidden depth that went beyond rank or experience. Maya had it. There was something in her eyes that told him this wasn't an ordinary officer. Continued undeterred. "Oh, don't worry, we won't ask you to jump out of a plane yet," he said, laughing. The room followed, the humor easing the tension as it always did. The new lieutenant remained poised, her body language relaxed yet impossibly alert. She was listening, analyzing, and calculating, not reacting emotionally, which in a room full of SEALs was as close to a weapon as one could be. As the briefing began, Maya took her seat near the back, quietly reviewing the operational notes on the table before her. The documents were standard, but she didn't just read them, she studied them. Lines of codes, operational procedures, team rosters, every detail fed into her mental map of the environment she had entered. The SEALs around her were focused on the briefing, but their occasional glances toward her betrayed curiosity, suspicion, and in some cases, a growing sense of unease. They didn't know why, but something about this lieutenant felt different. She exuded competence, but more than that, there was an undercurrent of controlled authority that didn't need to be proven. It simply existed. By the time the first operational simulation video was projected on the screen, Maya's analysis was already forming. She noted patterns in the team's execution, small mistakes that would rarely be caught by trainers and strengths that could be leveraged. She didn't write a single note, didn't raise a finger. Her mind cataloged every nuance with meticulous precision. Rhodes noticed her intense focus. He didn't interfere, but he made a mental note. This officer wasn't just observing, she was evaluating. The briefing concluded and the team filed out of the room, approached, still smirking, thinking he had successfully unsettled her. "So, Princess," he said lightly, "ready to show us what a desk jockey can do?" Maya's response was simple, quiet, and composed. "I'll do what needs to be done." There was no challenge in her tone, no threat, just certainty. And that certainty carried more weight than any raised voice. Froze for a fraction of a second, his instincts kicking in. He had faced dangerous men in hostile zones, but something about her calmness unnerved him. He couldn't place it, and that made him wary. Captain Rhodes gave her a brief nod as she left the room. There was something about the lieutenant that reminded him of officers he had met long ago, those rare few who seemed ordinary until the moment they revealed their true capability. She wasn't loud, she didn't need validation, and she didn't need to prove herself. Her presence alone commanded attention. By the time Maya walked across the courtyard to her temporary quarters, she had already assessed her environment. The SEALs, the command structure, the physical layout of the base, and the subtle tensions within the team. She was here for a mission, yes, but more importantly, she was here to observe, to understand, and to anticipate. And she would do it quietly, deliberately, and without anyone realizing the full scope of her skills, at least not yet. As the sun dipped lower over the ocean horizon, Maya Torres paused to look at the waves crashing against the shore. Might be a familiar base to the SEALs, but to her, it was a chessboard. Every movement mattered. Every observation mattered. And in the days ahead, she would prove that appearances could be deceiving, and that a quiet presence could carry far more power than a brash joke ever could. For now, the lieutenant remained in the shadows, silent and composed, letting the SEALs believe they understood her. But Maya Torres had entered their world with a purpose, and when the time came, she would reveal a depth of skill and knowledge that none of them would forget. By the next morning, whispers about Lieutenant Maya Torres had already begun circulating through the SEAL Training Command. Rumors, as unpredictable as the ocean winds outside, moved faster than any official report. Some said she was a political appointee, a clean-cut officer plucked from bureaucracy with no experience in combat or field operations. Others speculated that she had spent her entire career behind a desk, analyzing spreadsheets rather than enemies. Petty Officer Blake, ever the instigator, spread his own exaggerated version of her background, recounting her first briefing with an added flourish for dramatic effect. "She probably grades reports for a living," he muttered to the group while glaring in her direction. "Bet she's never seen a real op, let alone fired a weapon under stress." A few of the younger SEALs snickered nervously, unsure whether to defend her or laugh at the joke, but Maya did not acknowledge them. Not a twitch, not a glance. She seemed immune to the noise. That silence only fueled the speculation. The SEALs had a culture of testing newcomers, a ritual of proving who belonged and who didn't. For the first week, they pushed her boundaries, led a series of subtle challenges, light barbs during briefings, mild tests of physical endurance during training exercises. He once challenged her to carry a 50-pound load across the obstacle course, smirking at her supposed fragility. Maya accepted calmly, analyzing the task before taking her first step. She moved with efficiency, her muscles responding not with panic but with quiet precision. She completed the course faster than expected, correcting minor inefficiencies in her own technique mid-run. Watched, eyes narrowing, realizing the unexpected. She was competent, far more competent than anyone had guessed. Meanwhile, Captain Rhodes observed from the sidelines. He had initially assigned her temporarily, thinking she was likely an analyst here to observe operational procedures, perhaps offer some minimal guidance. Now, he began to reconsider. There was a rhythm to her movements, a strategic approach to every action that suggested deep field experience. He remembered officers he had met years ago, those rare individuals who carried calm like a weapon. Maya Torres moved with that same quiet authority, a storm restrained behind a composed exterior. The next incident came during a routine equipment inspection. SEALs were expected to verify their kits meticulously: weapons, gear, navigation tools, communication devices. Still harboring doubts, intentionally swapped a minor component of a radio for a defective one, expecting it to go unnoticed. He smirked, ready to catch her in a mistake, or at least watch her panic. Instead, Maya immediately identified the fault. She handed him the component, pointed out the problem, and suggested a simple, elegant solution. Blinked. No hesitation. No defensiveness. He realized to his mounting frustration that he had misjudged her entirely. "That's impressive," he muttered under his breath. Maya said nothing. She didn't need to claim credit. The room, however, had begun to notice. Other SEALs started watching her more closely, their teasing replaced by curiosity. Rumors evolved into quiet discussions in corners of the mess hall. Who exactly was this officer? How did she know so much about tactics, gear, and procedures? Even junior SEALs, usually preoccupied with camaraderie and mischief, found themselves leaning in, listening intently whenever she spoke. Yet Maya herself remained an enigma. She never volunteered personal information. She did not brag about past missions, medals, or victories. Her experience was visible only through her actions, and her calm authority silently demanded respect. In a place dominated by bravado and physicality, this quiet competence was unsettling. It was almost unnerving for the SEALs who were used to leading and questioning everything. Captain Rhodes, increasingly intrigued, decided to observe her interactions more closely. During lunch in the small mess hall, he noted how Maya listened more than she spoke. She asked precise questions, then absorbed answers without immediate judgment. Her mental calculations were subtle but observable: a slight shift in posture, a brief pause, the careful eye contact with each speaker. Rhodes recognized these as signs of a strategic mind, someone who could lead under pressure without needing to dominate every conversation. On the other hand, began to feel a strange mix of irritation and respect. His jokes were no longer getting a reaction. In fact, they seemed to bounce harmlessly off her. Worse, each attempt he made to undermine her competence ended with her quietly outmaneuvering him, whether in conversation, during drills, or in problem-solving exercises. He started noticing things that no one else seemed to: the subtle hints of field experience hidden behind her composed demeanor, the way she assessed threats, how she analyzed body language, and the precision with which she executed even routine tasks. By the end of the week, the initial mockery had faded. Whispered speculation turned to cautious acknowledgement. Even, despite himself, had begun to adjust his behavior. "She's not what we thought," he admitted quietly to a fellow SEAL one afternoon while watching her inspect navigation tools with methodical care. "There's something different about her. Something dangerous, in a way I can't put my finger on." Maya's routine remained the same. Each day, she observed, she evaluated, and she integrated herself silently into the environment. She noticed minor inefficiencies in team coordination, areas where communication lagged, and potential operational risks that others had overlooked. Her notes, mental rather than written, were already forming a map of strengths and weaknesses, ready to be leveraged when the time came. And all the while, she never revealed more than necessary. The SEALs saw her as capable, yes, but no one yet understood the depth of her experience. No one knew she had been deployed in classified operations that even Tier 1 units couldn't officially acknowledge. The stories they had about her, political appointee, desk analyst, were laughable compared to the truth. She had survived missions so covert that she officially did not exist in military records. Yet here she was, blending seamlessly into a world designed to filter out the unworthy, quietly proving herself with every small action. Captain Rhodes, by the end of the week, had reached a quiet decision. Maya Torres was not to be underestimated. There was something about the way she carried herself, the precision in her observations, and the calm confidence of her answers that suggested she operated at a level far beyond what he had anticipated. She was not just an officer temporarily assigned to observe. She was a professional in her own right, one with skills that could change outcomes in ways most people couldn't even imagine. And for the SEALs, the stage was set. They had begun the week confident, joking, and dismissive. Now a subtle tension had taken root. There was curiosity, yes, but also a hint of fear, respectful, cautious fear. By the time Maya walked past them toward the end of the day, a few eyes lingered a moment longer. The quiet lieutenant had announced her presence without a word. The whispers had begun, and no one could stop them. Lieutenant Maya Torres had arrived at as quietly as the morning tide. But by the end of her first week, she had already started shifting the currents beneath the surface, currents that would soon reveal a depth of skill and authority that no SEAL could ignore. It was late in the afternoon when Captain Rhodes called a classified, closed-door briefing. The usual chatter of training grounds was replaced by a tense hush as the SEAL team assembled in a small, dimly lit room. The fluorescent lights flickered slightly, throwing shadows across the walls, giving the room an almost oppressive gravity. Nobody spoke. Everyone understood the weight of the situation. A recent covert operation overseas had failed, and now the higher command demanded answers. Maya Torres entered the room silently, her footsteps measured, each one in rhythm with the authority she carried without effort. His jaw tightened when he saw her. He had grown accustomed to testing her over the past week, trying to poke holes in her calm exterior, but now he couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his gut. He had fought in high-pressure situations in deserts, mountains, and oceans, yet he couldn't anticipate what this officer could do. The briefing began. Rhodes laid out the operation, objectives, target details, field communications, and personnel involved. The mission had been critical, an extraction that had gone wrong in hostile territory. Most of the data presented was technical, requiring careful analysis. SEALs, used to field-based, hands-on action, were now grappling with the complexity of intelligence reports layered with encryption and operational jargon. As Rhodes spoke, Maya's eyes scanned the documents and monitors, absorbing every detail. She wasn't just reading, she was processing, connecting dots, recognizing patterns. When he outlined a sequence of events leading to the mission failure, she interjected with calm authority. "Captain, the comms blackout in Sector Delta could only result from a jamming device deployed in an area the team passed on approach. That's consistent with the signal degradation we observed in logs from the second wave." A ripple of surprise ran through the room. Some of the SEALs exchanged glances. That level of tactical deduction wasn't typical at her rank, certainly not from someone supposedly from a desk job. Rhodes paused mid-sentence, staring at her. How do you know that?" he asked, his tone a mixture of curiosity and caution. Maya's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Because I was there." The words landed like a weight in the room. Silence followed. The SEALs didn't react immediately, not wanting to show their astonishment. Smirk vanished, replaced by confusion and a touch of apprehension. He had thought he understood her abilities, but now even he couldn't measure the depth of her knowledge. Rhodes cleared his throat and motioned for her to elaborate. "Explain," he said evenly. Maya continued, describing the operation sequence in precise detail. The timings, the movements, the way enemy teams had anticipated their actions, even the exact locations where communications failed. She spoke with calm authority, using technical language that only someone with direct field experience would know. She outlined potential improvements, small adjustments that could have prevented the failure, each one actionable and clear. By the time she finished, the room had shifted from skepticism to stunned respect. Rhodes leaned back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. He realized something crucial. The lieutenant was no ordinary officer. The specificity of her knowledge, the way she dissected the operation, was only possible if she had been present during the mission, or had access to intelligence that was classified far above her clearance. Still seated, exchanged a look with one of his colleagues. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered under his breath. "She shouldn't know this." Maya caught the remark but said nothing. She didn't need to. Her focus remained on the briefing, on solving the problem, not on defending herself. After the presentation, Rhodes requested a private discussion. The SEALs filed out, whispering among themselves. In the hallway, speculation ran wild. Some suggested she was a highly decorated operative under deep cover. Others dismissed it as intelligence training that had simply prepared her for this situation. Nobody could agree, but everyone agreed on one thing. She had just changed the dynamics of the room. Rhodes led Maya to his office, a small room lined with shelves of books and operational files. He closed the door and gestured for her to sit. For the first time since her arrival, the commanding officer seemed unsure, almost vulnerable. "Lieutenant Torres," he began, his voice measured but heavy with curiosity. "How did you know all of that? The details you just gave, they're not in any of the files accessible at your clearance level." Maya leaned back slightly, her expression neutral. "Captain, I have experience in covert operations that are not listed on any public record," she said softly. "Some missions require anonymity, erasure, and discretion. What I shared with you today is a result of that experience. You don't need to know the details, only that the assessments are accurate." Rhodes remained silent, processing the implications. His mind ran through possibilities, none of which fit neatly into standard Navy procedure. This woman, this lieutenant, had been involved in operations so secretive that even most SEALs would have no clue they occurred. He realized he had underestimated her from the moment she arrived. "And the team," Rhodes asked cautiously, "do they know?" Maya shook her head. "Not yet, and they don't need to. My goal here is observation and evaluation. They will see results, not the method behind them. That is enough." Rhodes nodded slowly, impressed despite himself. There was no arrogance in her voice, no need for recognition. She had the confidence and capability to command respect simply by being present and accurate. He could see why even the SEALs, with all their bravado, were beginning to doubt their own assumptions. Meanwhile, lingered near the hallway outside, trying to make sense of what he had just witnessed. He had mocked her, joked about her rank, assumed she was a paper pusher, a placeholder. Yet in the briefing, she had revealed insight that no one in the room, including him, could contest. Every instinct he had developed over years of combat told him she was dangerous. Not in a threatening way, but in a way that could outmaneuver the best of them. His pride stung, and he realized it would take time to reconcile the lieutenant he had mocked with the operative she truly was. Rhodes dismissed Maya with a nod, but his mind was already strategizing. She had arrived as a temporary assignment, yet her abilities would have a significant impact on operations. He now had to consider how best to integrate her observations without revealing the depth of her actual experience to the rest of the team. As Maya walked back toward her quarters, she passed through the courtyard. The SEALs were still training, still moving with the practiced precision of their discipline. His gaze followed her, his earlier amusement replaced with wariness. He had underestimated her in every possible way, and he knew it. Even as she moved quietly among them, she had shifted the power dynamics without raising her voice, without overtly asserting authority. By the end of the day, rumors about her grew louder, whispered in the corners of the base. Some were still skeptical, but the majority had begun to recognize something extraordinary. Lieutenant Maya Torres was more than just an intelligence officer. She was a tactical mind, a field operative disguised in the semblance of a rank, and she had just revealed the first hints of her true depth. In her quarters that evening, Maya reviewed the day's events quietly. Observations noted, assessments recorded in her mind. The SEALs had begun to respect her competence, yet none of them knew the half of it. That was intentional. She was here to watch, to evaluate, and to prepare. The real test, when her abilities would be needed in a critical moment, had not yet arrived, but she was ready, and she would be more than the team could anticipate. The quiet lieutenant, who had entered with little fanfare, was already leaving a subtle mark. The SEALs might laugh at her rank, joke about her presence, and underestimate her, but soon They would learn that appearances were deceiving. And Lieutenant Maya Torres did not just exist in the present. She carried the experience of operations erased from memory, missions that only she and a select few could recount. The storm of whispers and speculation was only the beginning. By the time the SEALs realized the full extent of her skill, it would be too late to dismiss her. And that thought, calm and calculated, was exactly how Maya wanted it. The next morning, Naval Base hummed with its usual rhythm. The sound of boots pounding across the obstacle course, shouted commands slicing through the salty air, and the faint, metallic clang of weapons being inspected. Lieutenant Maya Torres moved among the SEALs with her usual calm precision, observing the team as they executed a tactical training exercise. Her presence was quiet but impossible to ignore. Every motion, every decision was under her subtle scrutiny. Petty Officer Blake, however, had not forgotten the embarrassment of the previous week. Though he had begun to respect her capabilities, his pride remained bruised. This morning, he decided it was time to test her again, to see if her calm demeanor could be rattled, or if it was simply a clever facade. "Oh look, it's the lieutenant herself," he called, his voice carrying across the yard so everyone could hear. "Careful now, don't strain yourself climbing over an obstacle. Don't want to ruin your perfectly pressed uniform." Laughter erupted around him. Some of the younger SEALs joined in, exchanging amused glances. The joke was meant to belittle, to reinforce the stereotype that Maya was a desk officer out of her depth. Maya paused, assessing him. Her eyes, sharp and unflinching, locked onto. The air around her seemed to tighten, almost imperceptibly, but enough to make him shift uncomfortably. She didn't speak at first. She simply stood, her posture calm, controlled, radiating a quiet authority that contrasted sharply with his boisterous energy. Finally she spoke, not loudly, not angrily, just enough to cut through the mockery. "Stand down." The words were soft, yet every syllable carried weight. It was a tone he had heard before in situations where seconds mattered, where failure could mean death. Instinctively froze. His body responded before his brain could. For the first time in years, he felt the unsettling sensation of being outmaneuvered, not by brute force, but by the quiet authority in a calm voice. The surrounding SEALs fell silent. Even those who had been laughing moments before now watched with a mixture of awe and uncertainty. It was as if the room itself had shifted, the energy subtly realigned around her. Captain Rhodes, observing from the sidelines, leaned slightly forward. He had seen commanding officers before, but there was something in Maya's delivery that reminded him of elite field commanders, those rare individuals who could assert control without raising their voice. His face flushed. The smirk he had worn all morning vanished. He wanted to argue, to regain control of the room, but his instincts cautioned against it. Something about Maya's presence told him this was not a bluff. He couldn't dismiss her authority because, in a way he couldn't explain, he felt compelled to obey it. It was a sensation foreign to him, a subtle command that bypassed ego and reached straight to instinct. Rhodes stepped forward, breaking the tension. "Lieutenant Torres," he said, his tone calm but firm, "let's proceed with the exercise." He gave a pointed look, one that reminded him that discipline was expected of all personnel, regardless of personal feelings. The team resumed the training, but the atmosphere had changed. Even the youngest SEALs, who had once giggled at her arrival, now watched her with caution and curiosity. Every instruction she offered, every observation she made, carried credibility. Reluctantly, followed along, nodding her subtle corrections to minor mistakes and her strategic guidance during the obstacle drill. During a simulated hostage rescue exercise, Maya demonstrated her tactical foresight. She identified weak points in team coordination that had gone unnoticed for years, suggesting adjustments in positioning and timing that improved efficiency without appearing to dictate. Her suggestions were precise, yet delivered in a way that respected the SEAL's autonomy. It was in leadership, guiding without dominating, instructing without condescension. Couldn't help but notice the difference between her and other officers he had encountered. Most tried to assert authority through noise, through gestures, through overt displays of rank. Maya did none of that. Her authority emanated naturally, quietly, yet undeniably. He felt a creeping sense of inadequacy, a subtle challenge to his own confidence. And though he hated to admit it, he respected her for it. By the afternoon, whispers had begun circulating again. "Did you see the way she handled?" one trainee asked another. "She didn't yell, she didn't even raise her voice, and he froze like a rookie." The conversation carried a mix of disbelief and admiration. Some speculated about her past, wondering if she had been in combat zones that no one here could imagine. Others simply accepted the reality that Lieutenant Torres was different and dangerous in a way that didn't rely on aggression. The subtle shift in authority did not go unnoticed by Captain Rhodes. He observed how the team responded, how previous bravado had diminished, and how Maya's calm efficiency had silently restructured the hierarchy. Rhodes was impressed but wary. He had seen too many officers come and go, many with skill but lacking the restraint to command respect without ego. Maya possessed that rare combination: expertise, discipline, and the ability to lead through quiet competence. As the training ended, approached her reluctantly. I didn't expect that," he admitted, avoiding eye contact. "You handled that better than anyone I've seen." Maya acknowledged the comment with a nod, no smile, no condescension. She didn't need to assert superiority. The recognition had been given, and that was enough. Later in the briefing room, Rhodes reviewed the day's observations with her. "You're changing the team's dynamics without even trying," he noted. "That's rare, dangerous even." Maya remained neutral, replying simply, "I'm here to evaluate, Captain. That is my mission." Rhodes leaned back, contemplating. She was competent, yes, more than competent, but he sensed there was a layer he had yet to uncover. The ease with which she commanded respect, the subtle authority that even responded to instinctively, it was not typical of a temporary intelligence officer. Rhodes made a mental note: the truth about Maya Torres would not reveal itself easily. By the end of the day, the SEALs had experienced a subtle but profound shift. The lieutenant who had arrived quietly, who had endured jokes and skepticism, had proven herself through action and presence. Humbled and cautious, was no longer mocking. The younger trainees looked to her with curiosity, a blend of respect and awe. And Captain Rhodes, ever observant, understood that Maya was far more than she appeared. As the sun dipped low over the horizon, Maya walked through the courtyard, her shadow long and calm against the concrete. The ocean breeze carried the scent of salt and anticipation. She had not spoken loudly, had not demanded recognition, and yet her influence was undeniable. The SEALs were learning, whether they wanted to admit it or not, that Lieutenant Maya Torres was someone who commanded authority by action and precision, not by rank, by jokes, or by bravado. And as the first stars appeared over the Pacific, Rhodes realized one undeniable fact: this was only the beginning. The lieutenant's true capabilities had yet to be revealed. The team had seen a glimpse, but they had no idea of the full scope of her experience. They didn't know that she had been in missions where lives, nations, and secrets hung in balance, missions that were erased from official records. For the SEALs, the joke that had started had backfired spectacularly. For Maya Torres, it had been nothing more than a test, a small ripple in the calm waters of a strategy already in motion. She had arrived quietly, but she was already shaping the team in ways no one had anticipated. And the stage was set for the moment when the lieutenant would reveal the first piece of the secret that would leave the entire command pale with realization. It was late afternoon when the communications room buzzed with urgency. An encrypted transmission had just arrived from naval intelligence, labeled as critical and time-sensitive. The kind of message that would rattle even seasoned SEALs. Captain Rhodes walked briskly into the room, his normally composed expression tight with tension. The signal was partially decoded, but a final layer of encryption remained, a layer that required clearance few possessed. The team gathered around the console. Rhodes attempted to input override codes, nothing worked. Standing beside him, shrugged dismissively. "Maybe we should call it," he muttered, half joking. Bet Lieutenant Princess can Google it. The room chuckled lightly, an attempt to ease tension, but the humor rang hollow under the weight of the situation. Maya Torres stepped forward, calm as ever. Her eyes scanned the lines of encrypted code projected on the monitors. Unlike the others, she did not frown, hesitate, or second-guess. She didn't need to. Her mind worked in layers, connecting patterns that would have taken the entire team hours, perhaps days, to unravel. Rhodes watched her carefully, wary yet intrigued. Smirk faltered. He knew her calmness was deliberate, but he still underestimated it. "What are you gonna do?" he asked under his breath. "Say magic words." Maya ignored him. Instead, she leaned slightly closer to the console, eyes tracing the sequence of numbers and symbols. Every muscle in her body was relaxed, yet every movement was precise, intentional. A faint hum of authority seemed to emanate from her, and even the junior SEALs felt the weight of it. Then, with a measured breath, she spoke the phrase. A short, precise combination of words that, to any trained SEAL, sounded like nothing more than routine radio protocol. But Rhodes and a few others froze. Their instincts told them immediately. This was not routine. This was the activation of a Tier 0 operational code, an ultra-classified authorization used only by ghost operatives, soldiers whose identities had been erased from all records. The system accepted the code instantly. The encrypted message decrypted fully, displaying a complete operational brief on the screen. Data flowed seamlessly, revealing locations, operative statuses, threat assessments, and contingency plans. Every line was actionable, every decision supported by real-time intelligence. The room went silent, the kind of silence that precedes disbelief. Captain Rhodes felt a chill creep along his spine. Only certain operatives in the entire Navy had clearance to speak that code, and Maya Torres, officially, was not one of them. His mind raced as he connected the dots. The calm authority, the tactical insight, the ability to command respect quietly. All signs now pointed to a truth he had suspected but could scarcely believe. However, was the first to break the stunned silence. "Wait, you know that code?" His voice faltered, disbelief etched across his features. That's impossible." Maya turned to him, expression neutral, tone calm. "It is only impossible if you assume my presence here is ordinary." His jaw dropped. The room's energy shifted from awe to tension. Every SEAL in the room sensed it. This was more than an officer with field experience. This was someone who existed above the normal chain of command, someone whose skills and knowledge had been intentionally erased from official history. Rhodes stepped closer, his voice quiet but edged with urgency. "Explain." Maya gave a small nod, as though she had been expecting this question. "Captain, my previous assignments were classified at a level higher than standard operational clearances. Missions conducted under Tier 0 protocols are not recorded in any official logs. My identity, for all intents and purposes, was removed from the system. I was tasked with operations too sensitive for public or departmental knowledge." Took a step back, still struggling to process what he had just witnessed. "So, you've been lying to us." Maya shook her head slightly. "Not lying, concealing. There is a difference. You were never supposed to know." Rhodes, meanwhile, had gone pale. He recognized the gravity immediately. The lieutenant's abilities were not just impressive, they were beyond anything he had anticipated. Every tactical assessment, every insight, every calculated observation was rooted in actual, high-level field experience. She wasn't an intelligence officer temporarily assigned. She was a ghost operative, evaluating the SEAL team's efficiency and readiness for missions that had not yet been publicly disclosed. For the SEALs, comprehension dawned slowly, like a rising tide. The jokes about her rank, the mockery, the assumptions of incompetence, all of it evaporated in the face of her revealed capability. Blake's pride ached as he realized the extent of his misjudgment. He had mocked someone who could, with a simple phrase, unlock secrets that no one else could even access. Maya continued, her tone calm and factual. This message was urgent. It contained intelligence for a mission in hostile territory. Only operatives with Tier 0 clearance could access and interpret the data safely. My role here was not to interfere with the SEALs' daily operations, but to evaluate the team's readiness and relay critical intelligence as needed. Swallowed hard, the weight of realization was almost too much to bear. You're basically a ghost. You don't exist officially. Maya's gaze did not waver. Exactly. Captain Rhodes finally spoke, his voice tight with a mix of awe and concern. And you've been here, evaluating, watching, without anyone knowing your true level of clearance or experience. She nodded once. Yes, and it is necessary that the team only sees what is relevant to their performance. Full disclosure would compromise operational integrity. The room remained silent, each SEAL processing the revelation in their own way. Maya had shifted from being a quiet observer to someone untouchable in terms of knowledge and authority. Her calm demeanor, the precision of her actions, and the subtle command she exerted without raising her voice, every detail now carried deeper meaning. Finally finding his voice, muttered, "So all those jokes, the teasing, we were wrong about you, way wrong." Maya's lips curved slightly, not in amusement but in acknowledgement. "You were testing assumptions. That is expected. What is important is the result, the team's readiness, not personal pride." Rhodes looked at her gravely. "Lieutenant Torres, this changes everything. Your presence here is no longer temporary. Your insights, your experience, they're invaluable." Maya remained calm. "Captain, my assignment here is limited in duration. My purpose is evaluation, and to ensure the team can handle operations requiring precision and discretion. I am effective in this capacity, but my presence alone is not a substitute for their training. They must earn their readiness, and I am here to confirm it." For the SEALs, the room had shifted from skepticism to disbelief to awe in mere moments. The jokes had ended. The doubts had vanished. They were facing someone who had operated in the shadows, who had survived and executed missions that most of them couldn't even imagine. And she was quietly, efficiently, evaluating them all, without raising her voice, without overt display of rank or authority. As the decrypted transmission scrolled across the monitors, Rhodes realized one truth. Lieutenant Maya Torres was no ordinary officer. She was a shadow operative, a ghost, a weapon of precision and intellect who had just revealed a fraction of her true capability. The captain, pale and silent, felt a mixture of respect, relief, and concern. Respect for her skill, relief that she was on their side, and concern over the sheer power and secrecy she represented. Maya, calm as ever, turned and prepared to leave the communications room. The team watched silently, the atmosphere charged with realization. She had shifted the balance of authority and respect in a single act, speaking the secret code that only existed for operatives erased from history. The SEALs would never forget this moment. The jokes about rank, the mockery, the assumptions of incompetence, they were gone. Lieutenant Maya Torres was a force beyond comprehension, and the room knew it. Captain Rhodes, still pale, could only nod silently. This was a moment that would define perception of her, and the team would soon understand that appearances could be deceiving in ways they had never imagined. And as Maya walked down the hallway, her steps measured and calm, whispered under his breath, almost to himself, "I underestimated her completely." The lieutenant didn't respond. She didn't need to. The code had spoken for her. The night settled over Naval Base like a heavy cloak, quiet except for the occasional gust of ocean wind and the distant clatter of training gear being secured. Most of the SEALs had returned to their quarters, minds buzzing from the events earlier in the day. Lieutenant Maya Torres, however, remained in the operations room, reviewing mission logs and encrypted reports with meticulous precision. Captain Rhodes entered, closing the door behind him. His expression was serious, almost grave. The realization of what they had just witnessed, the Tier 0 code, the decrypted intelligence, was still weighing heavily on him. Maya looked up calmly, unflinching, as if the gravity of the moment were routine to her. "Lieutenant," Rhodes began carefully, "you've changed everything we thought we knew about you. I need clarity. I need to understand the scope of your experience. What have you done? Where have you been?" Maya didn't flinch. Her voice was calm, measured, like water flowing over stone. "Captain, I've been deployed on missions that do not exist in official records, operations too sensitive for conventional acknowledgement. Some missions involved counterterrorism in hostile territories, covert extraction of high-value targets, and intelligence gathering in regions classified beyond Tier 1 or 2 clearance." Rhodes leaned back, absorbing every word. His mind raced as he tried to picture the extent of her service. And all of this erased from history. "Exactly," Maya replied. "The erasure is deliberate. The fewer people who know of these operations, the safer the mission outcomes. It protects both the personnel and the information involved." Who had lingered outside the doorway listening stepped in hesitantly. You've been operating under the radar this whole time." His disbelief was evident. "All the time we've been training, you've had experience most of us can't even imagine." Maya nodded once calmly. "Yes, and my role here is not to overshadow the team. It is to evaluate readiness and efficiency, and to provide intelligence where necessary. The exercises you've completed over the past week were to determine how well the team functions under stress, with or without my input." His jaw tightened. He felt a mix of awe and frustration. For years he had trained, led, and earned the respect of peers through skill and discipline. Yet here was someone who had achieved levels of experience he couldn't comprehend, and had done so quietly, without any need for recognition. "So everything we assumed about you was wrong," he muttered, almost to himself. Maya's gaze was calm, unwavering. Assumptions are rarely accurate indicators of ability. Judgments made without full information are often misleading. Her tone was gentle but carried the weight of undeniable truth. Captain Rhodes, still pale from earlier, asked the question that had been lingering in his mind. "Lieutenant Torres, why reveal the secret code now?" Maya's eyes briefly met his. "Because the information it decrypted is critical. The mission it pertains to requires immediate assessment and potential action. Timing is everything in these situations. If delays occur due to hesitation or uncertainty, the consequences could be catastrophic." Still reeling, shook his head. "So all the teasing, the testing, it didn't matter to you. You were watching, evaluating, preparing." Maya didn't answer directly. Instead, she turned back to the monitors, reviewing the decrypted transmission. "Preparation is not about ego. It is about readiness. The team's performance under stress, their decision-making, their coordination, these are the true measures of capability." Rhodes noticed the subtle authority in her words. It wasn't just that she had revealed a secret code or displayed superior intelligence. It was that she had done so without assertion, without demand, and without needing recognition. That was rare. That was leadership. His frustration grew alongside his respect. He had spent years proving himself through action, through physical skill, through courage. Yet here was someone who had done the same, many times over, without drawing attention. It was humbling, almost disorienting. "Lieutenant," Rhodes said after a moment, "I need to know more. If you are here to evaluate, I must understand the full context. What risks are we facing? How do we integrate this intelligence with the team's current readiness?" Maya's response was precise, methodical. "The intelligence pertains to a high-value target in hostile territory. Enemy operatives have become aware of potential infiltration. The team's recent exercises have highlighted both strengths and vulnerabilities. Coordination under stress is solid, but communication gaps remain under high-pressure scenarios. Minor adjustments could drastically improve operational efficiency and survivability." Listening quietly, couldn't help but feel a growing sense of urgency. This wasn't training anymore. This was real. The calm, methodical evaluation she offered had immediate consequences. It was one thing to lead in simulations, another to anticipate real threats. Maya continued, detailing subtle tactical adjustments, positioning strategies, timing for entry and exit, coordination with external intelligence sources, and contingency plans for extraction. Every suggestion was practical, grounded in direct experience, and designed to maximize efficiency while minimizing risk. Rhodes absorbed the information, understanding that Maya's guidance was more than theoretical. These were the refinements of someone who had been in life-or-death situations countless times, someone who had survived missions that were officially erased and classified beyond reach. Finally, Maya spoke of the human element. The team's greatest strength is cohesion. Trust must remain unbroken and every member must understand their role. Leadership is not merely rank, it is competence, consistency, and presence. Respect is earned by action, not words. Exhaled slowly. He realized the depth of the lesson. He had been arrogant, judgmental, dismissive, and yet she had never insulted him, never sought to humiliate him. Her authority was quiet, natural, and undeniable. Rhodes leaned forward. Lieutenant Torres, given your past experience, your knowledge of Tier 0 operations, and your ability to evaluate effectively, your presence here has become more than temporary. The team is stronger with you, but they must also understand boundaries. We cannot disclose the full extent of your past. It would compromise operational security. But your integration into the team must be managed carefully. Maya nodded once. Understood, Captain. My objective is evaluation, improvement, and ensuring mission success. Full disclosure is unnecessary for team effectiveness. The room fell silent for a moment. The SEALs, even those who had been skeptical, now recognized the reality. Lieutenant Maya Torres was extraordinary. Her calm authority, her tactical precision, her knowledge of secret operations, all of it created a presence that was impossible to ignore. Later that evening, Maya walked the courtyard alone, the Pacific breeze carrying the faint scent of salt and anticipation. She reflected quietly on her role, knowing that her presence was already changing the dynamics of the team. The SEALs had seen her capability, but they didn't yet comprehend the full depth of her experience. That revelation would come only when necessary. Back in the barracks, replayed the events of the day in his mind. Every joke he had made, every attempt to test her, every assumption about her abilities, all had been wrong, and the realization humbled him. For the first time in years, he faced someone whose calm, authority, precision, and experience rivaled his own. And yet, unlike him, she had achieved it in silence, in shadows, and with total discretion. Captain Rhodes, reviewing the decrypted intelligence late into the night, realized the lieutenant had not only revealed critical operational data, but also subtly redefined the hierarchy of respect and authority within the SEAL team. Maya Torres' influence was quiet but profound, and it would continue to shape operational readiness long after this mission. In her quarters, Maya prepared for the next phase. The decrypted intelligence had set the stage, but her mission was not complete. She would continue to observe, to evaluate, and to guide, always without unnecessary disclosure, always with precision. Her past was a shadow, her actions were deliberate, and her presence alone had already begun to change the SEALs' perception of leadership, competence, and authority. The storm of awe, respect, and subtle fear had begun, and it would only intensify in the days to come. Lieutenant Maya Torres had revealed a fraction of her power, a glimpse of the operational mastery that lay beneath her calm exterior, and would never view her, or the world of covert operations, the same way again. The following morning, Naval Base was alive with motion. The sun glinted off the ocean, casting long shadows across the training grounds, where SEALs ran drills, tested gear, and coordinated tactical exercises. The air smelled of salt and sweat, and the tension among the team was palpable. They had spent the past days digesting Maya Torres' capabilities, and every interaction now carried an unspoken weight. Captain Rhodes gathered the team for a high-intensity exercise, an advanced simulated hostage rescue in a compound rigged with multiple obstacles, enemy markers, and unpredictable variables. This was no ordinary training drill. It was designed to test split-second decision-making under high stress, the kind of scenario that mirrored real-world operations where lives hung in balance. "Listen up," Rhodes began, projecting authority but allowing Maya's presence to silently command attention. "Today's exercise will test coordination, strategy, and adaptability. Lieutenant Torres will oversee the operation. She will provide guidance where necessary, but the team will make decisions in real time. Trust in your training and in her assessment." Still grappling with humility and respect for Maya, muttered under his breath to a fellow SEAL, "I still don't know how to process this. She knows everything, and she doesn't even need to say much." Maya stepped forward, her movements deliberate and composed. "Team, the objective is simple. Extract hostages safely while neutralizing threats with minimal exposure. Communication is your lifeline. Coordination is your strength. I will provide feedback in real time, but your choices dictate the outcome. Remember, hesitation costs lives." The SEALs nodded, aware that this was more than a drill. The confidence and calm in her voice carried authority without arrogance, a rare quality they had come to recognize but still struggled to fully comprehend. The team split into units, moving silently toward the compound. Maya observed every decision, noting efficiency, timing, and communication gaps. She made occasional adjustments, subtle hand signals, quiet instructions, and short verbal prompts that guided without dominating. This unit approached the compound's main entrance first. A simulated enemy guard, represented by an instructor, moved erratically, signaled for a breach, expecting Maya to intervene or micromanage. Instead, she whispered one precise correction. "Delay 2 seconds. Shift left flank 3 degrees." Hesitated, instincts conflicting with respect for her authority, but he followed the instruction. The result was immediate. The simulated guard was neutralized silently, and the team advanced without raising an alarm. "Good," Maya said softly, her eyes never leaving the tactical display. "Now adjust the secondary team. Cover all escape routes." The exercise intensified as additional threats emerged: improvised obstacles, alarms, and decoy hostiles. Maya's guidance remained calm and precise, providing critical insight without removing the responsibility from the team. Every action she suggested was based on experience only someone who had survived real, high-stakes operations could possess. Overwhelmed yet awed, began to understand the depth of her expertise. Her corrections were not arbitrary. They were rooted in tactical experience, threat anticipation, and real-time assessment. The subtle shifts she recommended often went unnoticed by untrained eyes but made the difference between simulated success and failure. Meanwhile, Rhodes monitored from the command station, observing both the team's performance and Maya's interventions. He realized something crucial. Maya wasn't just assessing operational skill. She was evaluating leadership, trust, and cohesion under pressure. Each decision forced the SEALs to rely on her guidance while maintaining their own initiative, a delicate balance few instructors could master. As the exercise progressed, the team faced a critical scenario. The hostages were placed in a simulated high-risk zone surrounded by multiple threats. Instincts screamed to charge in aggressively, relying on brute skill. Maya, however, directed a different approach. "Flank from the east," she instructed. "Approach silently, using terrain for cover. Timing is critical, wait for my signal to breach." Hesitated, conflicted. "That's slower," he argued internally. "We could just push through." But experience taught him to trust her assessment. He followed her guidance, moving in synchronization with the other units. When the signal came, the breach was executed flawlessly. Hostages were extracted with minimal exposure, threats neutralized efficiently. The SEALs froze momentarily, realization dawning on them. This wasn't just about following orders. It was about trusting someone whose experience exceeded their comprehension, someone whose authority was silent but absolute. Finally exhaled. We couldn't have done that without her, he admitted quietly. No one else, not even us. Maya's expression remained neutral. Your performance was competent. Coordination improved under stress, and communication gaps narrowed. Trust in your team and in calculated guidance ensures operational success. Captain Rhodes nodded, impressed. Lieutenant Torres, your input was critical, but notice the subtlety. You guided, you didn't take control. You allowed them to act while enhancing efficiency. That's leadership. Maya's calm gaze met his. Leadership is not about dominance. It is about influence, precision, and preparation. The team must grow in skill and confidence, not rely on my presence alone. As the exercise concluded, the team gathered, catching their breath, their minds buzzing from the intensity of the simulation. The young SEALs now fully understood the magnitude of Maya's capability. They had seen firsthand that her presence wasn't just advisory, it was transformative. The dynamics of the team had shifted irreversibly. Humbled approached Maya. Lieutenant, we've underestimated you completely. Maya's gaze was steady. Assumptions are rarely accurate measures of ability. What matters is performance and readiness, not perception. Rhodes observed quietly, noting the subtle impact she had on the team. The SEALs' respect had shifted from reluctant acknowledgement to profound trust. Her strategic guidance had not only ensured mission success in simulation, but had also redefined how the team understood leadership, authority, and competence. Later, as the sun dipped toward the horizon, Maya walked through the courtyard alone, reviewing the day's performance. Her mind cataloged observations, noting strengths and areas for improvement. Every member of the team had been tested, not just in skill, but in their ability to trust, follow, and adapt. Lingered behind, watching her. He had been humbled, awed, and challenged in ways he hadn't anticipated. He realized that true leadership wasn't about rank or ego. It was about precision, experience, and the quiet authority to guide without dominating. Maya Torres embodied all of it, and the SEAL team would never look at training or leadership the same way again. As night fell over, the shadows deepened around the base, mirroring the lessons the team had learned. Lieutenant Maya Torres had tested the SEALs not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. She had revealed her skill, her foresight, and her capacity to lead without speaking loudly. The team's respect was now earned, trust cautiously placed, and their perception of authority forever altered. Captain Rhodes, watching from the command station, understood the implications. Maya Torres was no longer a temporary observer. She was a pivotal presence, a force that had already reshaped operational potential. Her past was shadowed and classified, yet her influence was immediate and undeniable. And as the night settled, one truth became clear. The lieutenant's tests were only beginning. The team had survived her first real challenge, but the true mission, the one that would push them to the edge of skill, trust, and cohesion, was coming. Maya Torres would guide, evaluate, and prepare them for a reality that demanded precision, discipline, and courage beyond anything they had faced before. The calm before the storm had passed. The SEALs had glimpsed the power of shadows, and they would soon understand that Lieutenant Maya Torres was a master of operating within them. The following morning dawned over Naval Base with a sharp, crisp clarity. The air was filled with tension, as though the ocean wind itself carried the weight of expectation. Today, the SEAL team faced their final test under Lieutenant Maya Torres' guidance, a live-action simulation designed to push them beyond the limits of skill, judgment, and trust. This was the culmination of the days of observation, evaluation, and subtle guidance. Captain Rhodes assembled the team in the briefing room. He stood at the head of the table, his expression grave yet resolute. Today's exercise is unlike anything you've faced. It's designed to replicate real-world conditions, multiple hostiles, limited intel, and critical civilian elements. Lieutenant Torres will oversee strategy. Your success depends on communication, adaptability, and trust in each other and in her guidance. The SEALs exchanged glances, a mixture of apprehension and resolve. The memory of past exercises lingered, particularly Maya's calm authority and uncanny foresight. Standing among them, clenched his jaw. He had learned humility over the past days, but he knew that true trust would be the ultimate test. Maya addressed the team quietly, her tone carrying both authority and reassurance. The objective is clear: neutralize threats, protect civilians, and secure the compound. Timing is critical. Decisions must be made with precision and confidence. Follow your training and trust your instincts. I will provide guidance as needed, but the operation's success is in your hands. The team moved to the staging area, checking gear, reviewing tactical plans, and preparing mentally for the high-pressure scenario. Maya's eyes scanned each member, noting subtle signs of hesitation, stress, or overconfidence. She cataloged these observations mentally, aware that leadership required both guidance and subtle manipulation of outcomes to optimize performance. As the operation began, the SEALs infiltrated the simulated compound. Hostiles moved unpredictably, civilians were placed in high-risk areas, and communication lines were deliberately disrupted to simulate real-world chaos. Maya's role was observational, yet every word she spoke carried critical timing. "Left flank adjust 3 steps," she instructed softly, unnoticed by the simulation's enemy. "Cover the corridor before breach. Wait." Followed her guidance reluctantly, yet precisely. The team's movements became synchronized, anticipating her subtle cues while maintaining their own initiative. Each member relied on instinct honed through years of training, yet the added precision of Maya's guidance turned good performance into near-perfect execution. Unexpected complications arose. A simulated explosion created chaos, disorienting the team, and enemy markers began moving unpredictably. A split-second decision was required to prevent civilian casualties. Maya's voice cut through the noise, calm and precise. "Divide east and west approaches. Move silently. 1 unit covers extraction. 1 neutralizes hostiles. Timing now, count 3, breach together." His heart pounded, yet he executed the command with unhesitating precision. The SEALs responded flawlessly, their prior doubts replaced by instinctive trust in her guidance. The simulated civilians were secured, the hostiles neutralized, and the operation concluded with minimal simulated casualties. As the exercise ended, the team gathered, sweating, breathing heavily but victorious. The room was silent for a moment, everyone processing the intensity of the simulation. Then Rhodes spoke, voice heavy with pride and awe. "That was extraordinary. You performed under extreme stress, adapted to chaos, and succeeded where many would fail. Lieutenant Torres, your guidance was instrumental, yet the team retained initiative. That is exceptional leadership." Maya's expression remained calm. The team executed precisely because trust was established. Leadership is not about control, it is about influence, observation, and timely guidance. Success is measured in results, not recognition. Stepped forward, his voice unsteady but sincere. "Lieutenant, I underestimated you completely. You didn't just guide us, you taught us without even trying. We owe you everything." The younger SEALs nodded in agreement, their eyes filled with respect. The lessons of the past days had culminated in this moment, a realization that skill, leadership, and authority were not about ego or rank, but about precision, discipline, and the ability to inspire trust even without overt assertion. Captain Rhodes addressed the team one last time. "Remember this day. What you've learned here goes beyond training. It's about operational excellence, trust, and cohesion. Lieutenant Torres has not just evaluated you. She has shaped the team into a unit capable of handling missions that require extraordinary skill and judgment. Carry that knowledge forward." Maya, quiet as ever, added, "Your performance today reflects not just training but growth. Trust, communication, and adaptability define operational success. These lessons extend beyond drills. They are the principles that will guide you in every real-world scenario." Later, as the sun set over, Maya walked alone through the courtyard. The base was quiet now, shadows stretching long across the pavement. She reflected on the past days, the jokes, the skepticism, the subtle tests, and the final validation of trust and skill. The SEAL team had evolved, not because of rank, but because of guidance rooted in experience, precision, and quiet authority. Approached her silently, a newfound respect evident in his posture. "Lieutenant, thank you for everything. I get it now. You didn't need to shout, you didn't need to prove anything, you just led." Maya's lips curved slightly, the faintest acknowledgement of the compliment. Leadership is not about acknowledgement, it is about results, preparation, and integrity. You understood this today, and that is what matters. Captain Rhodes joined them, observing the interaction. "Lieutenant Torres, your presence has changed. You've proven your abilities, guided the team, and demonstrated leadership that is quiet but undeniable. I hope you understand the impact you've had, not just on operations but on the people here." Maya nodded, her gaze steady. "I understand, Captain. My role is complete when the team is prepared and capable. Their growth is the measure of success, not my recognition." The SEALs, once skeptical and mocking, now looked at her with awe and respect. Humbled but enlightened, realized that the lieutenant had taught him the most valuable lesson, that true authority is earned through skill, precision, and trust, not rank or bravado. That evening, the team gathered for debriefing. Rhodes led the session, but it was clear to everyone that Maya Torres' influence had reshaped their perception of leadership. The drills, the subtle tests, and the revelation of her Tier 0 capabilities had transformed them into a more cohesive, capable, and disciplined unit. As the night deepened, Maya returned to her quarters. She reflected quietly, aware that her mission had evolved beyond mere observation. The SEAL team was ready for real-world operations, prepared for unpredictability, and united through trust and skill. Her presence had achieved its purpose, not through dominance, but through guidance, precision, and subtle authority. The final lesson lingered. Appearances are deceiving, authority is earned through competence, and trust is the ultimate measure of leadership. Lieutenant Maya Torres had demonstrated all of this, quietly mastering the shadows, guiding the team to a level few could comprehend. And as the stars shimmered over the Pacific, Naval Base had changed forever. The SEALs had not just survived the drills, they had grown under the guidance of a ghost operative whose calm, precise authority had reshaped their understanding of skill, leadership, and trust. Maya Torres had arrived in silence, and she had left a legacy that would endure long after the exercises ended. The story of the lieutenant who joked about her rank, revealed a secret code, and mastered the shadows would be remembered. Not officially, of course, for some things were never recorded, but in the respect, trust, and skill she had instilled in the SEALs, her presence was indelibly etched.